The problem is when you have these specialty phones, Pocophone, Razer phone, like all these phones that you see on the Android side where you're like, Android phones can do this. Back in the day, it was Apple had, I believe they had an 8 megapixel camera for like 5 years. They didn't upgrade the camera.
Till last year or something.
Right. While Google was doing, or Android phones were doing 10 megapixel, 12 megapixel, and even more. The problem is if you are Pocophone or Razer phone and you expect to sell 100,000 phones, that means you need 100,000 12 megapixel cameras. If you're Apple and you expect to sell 240 million phones, you need 240 million 12 megapixel cameras. And if Sony says to you, we can't make that number of cameras for your phone, we can't supply that reliably, then Apple's going to say, okay, we're not doing that then, because unless we have every single part of the phone available to us, we can't make the phone. And we're not going to take the gamble that says, in March, there's something that happens to the supply chain of the cameras, and now we can't make phones for 6 weeks. Welcome to Geared Up, brought to you by National Car Rental. I'm Andrew Edwards.
We're back, and I'm John Rettinger.
Geared Up is your weekly look at the world of consumer electronics and gadgets. And John, this week, we have what I thought would be potentially the greatest guest that we've ever had. I thought that. However, as we all met up in this Google Duo call, number one, it took him like 10 minutes to actually click on the link and join us. And then number two, when he actually showed up in the video chat, he shows up with the most ridiculous hat I may have ever seen in my life.
Ever. Now, if we can set the stage, so obviously listeners can't hear this, but we can see everybody. Yes, John shows up wearing what I can only describe as a fan hat. Like a hat with with two fans on it. And he described it as sucking in air and spitting cool air on his face.
Now, this is Mr. Jon Prosser, by the way.
Hello,
who is
everybody.
our guest this week.
By the way,
we should have said that.
I have some bones to pick. Last time I was here, you said I was the greatest guest, okay?
Correct.
And I felt really good about that, I went and I ended the show. I slept really good that night. I was like, all right, I'm their best guest. But then Sarah Dietschy was on the next week, and she was definitely the best guest ever. So is this just something you say to everybody, and I'm not actually special?
Listen, you were, but then if you recall, after the show, you refused to tell anybody that you were even here. And
that's
so
not true.
Sarah, oh yes, it is. You were like, hey, I'm on the Painfully Honest podcast this week, ladies and gentlemen. You said nothing of Geared Up, and Sarah so graciously.
I'm going to tweet it in all
people.
caps now. This one's going out in all caps 3 times.
All
so
right,
no one
good,
can miss
good.
the tweet. Also, listen, my hat is special. I got it in the mail. I don't know who it's from or how I have it, which is probably a reason not to wear it.
That's even better.
But it has vents on the front. Like if you're standing in front of me, the vents face you, right?
Okay.
And then it sucks in the air from the world and it cools it and then it spits it into my face. So you walk out there and you have your own little air conditioner. Your face is nice and air conditioned and it's filtered air, so I can't get Rona. At least that's what I think.
Well, let's test it out and see what happens. I'll
test it for the never when I go out in public. Yeah.
All right, guys, let's talk some tech. So, hey, Jon Prosser's here, big journalist in general, but especially as it pertains to the behind the scenes of some of these companies, especially Apple in recent times. So we have some behind the scenes Apple stuff we're going to talk about later in the show. But let's go back to the last show, John. So since the last show, you were on it. There's 2 Johns here, so I'm going to be saying John, and no one's going to know who I'm talking to. John Rettinger. Last show, you mentioned that you could only talk about the hardware experience of the Surface Duo. You are not allowed to talk about turning it on.
Been a while.
Right. Now, since then, I've gotten one as well. We're able to talk about it. We were able to turn them on. How do you feel about this device now that you could just be completely honest about both the hardware and the software?
It's fresh in my head, too. Actually, this morning, I filmed a Duo versus Fold 2 video. And my thoughts on the Surface are, I think, different than a lot of people. And I've been really hard on Microsoft in years past. I've made many videos entitled "Don't Buy Whatever Products." I think they're charging a premium for not premium products. I look at the Duo very much under the lens of this is not a phone. This is something else that happens to make phone calls. I think for people who are expecting a smartphone experience will be very disappointed. If you go into it expecting it, I view this as a perfect companion device to something else. I think Microsoft.
So are you saying you should, if you buy it, You should carry your actual phone.
Correct. That's what he just said.
Duo? Okay.
That's actually is what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's too tough to use as a phone. It's like two separate phone experiences. I think the hardware is amazing, and the hardware has no business being that good and feeling that good for Gen 1, but it's not a device for everybody. As far as the aesthetic, when it comes to the looks, the software, despite being made by Microsoft, which soft is in the name, it was not ready for prime time. And I'm not talking about like crazy things the software should be doing. I'm talking about like swiping home.
Yeah.
Like the very, very simple software things are not there. And I think Microsoft's decision to essentially use stock Google and work with Google instead of making their own version was an interesting choice, and probably won't see the result of that until, another probably 2 generations from now.
Yeah. Listen.
All right, let's hear it.
If you're going to tell people this device is $1,400 and this is your secondary device, right? Even at $1,400 alone, without needing a second device, like talking about the Z Fold 2, well, that's almost a $2,000 device, but I digress. At $1,400, it's enough of a stretch to be someone's primary and only device. To make it a secondary device on top of that at that cost is so out of reach. However, if it was a great software experience, I could see it. But like you talked about, even swiping home was a problem. Now, I had a problem. When I go into Outlook and Outlook is having a problem on this device, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm shutting it. I'm closing this down, and I don't know if I ever want to open it again, because your own apps, Office, should be working flawlessly on this device, and they're not. So this is, in my opinion, the prime example of when I always say great software is better than great hardware, and this fantastic hardware is just not great because of the software.
Here's a question though. Next year, same hardware, it's great hardware. If the software is great, is it any better?
Yeah.
If you use the exact same hardware,
can you justify it just with great software?
I would say so.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would change, and this is a very, very minor thing. Actually, Jon Prosser, I think you talked about this. The rumor that Apple was working on a foldable that wouldn't have a folding display, but it would kind of be like 2 displays that met in the middle, so you wouldn't. Right. It would look as if it was one display. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I would change here, because there is a break between the 2 displays where
there's
you can
like a gap, right?
Yeah,
like
you can see through
the world.
Exactly, you can see through it.
That's my only thing. It's really good at single tasking multiple apps.
Yes.
And if you're trying to use it as one big screen for watching video or playing games, you'll be very disappointed.
Yeah.
Is there any noticeable lag between the 2?
It depends, and that just comes down to the software, right? I mean, I've seen experiences of people playing Stadia games and like xCloud, like one on each screen, and like pretty smoothly. Mm-hmm. But then, like Andrew mentioned, like you try to send an email and like the whole thing crashes. Yeah, so, like it's like I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe
it's too bad.
Yeah,
I do think the hardware itself is nice. It feels futuristic, but the software certainly does not.
Maybe they'll call the Surface Duo 2 the Surface Do-Over.
Ew.
This guy. Look at this guy.
You're always folks.
That would have been the tweet
free,
of the
folks.
day. Please tweet that. Staying on the Microsoft topic, switching over to Xbox and PlayStation 5. Now, we've been following this and we've been making predictions.
We have.
And we now know the pricing of both the Xbox Series S, the Xbox Series X, and the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Digital Only Edition. And John, I want to know, Prosser, how did it... Wait a minute, I'm sorry. I meant Rettinger, and I'm saying, what is going on?
Man, you all over the place.
Yes. John Rettinger.
Yes.
I want to know how these prices, after you saw them all, kind of lined up with the expectations that you had in particular.
First, I felt vindicated after getting shredded by my audience for saying Microsoft was going to undercut the price of the PlayStation. Yeah. In fact, I even called the prices for what they were going to be, and I got wrecked. So, first of all, I felt good for myself.
Congratulations.
But also, I do want to give Sony credit, because the hardware, at least I believe in the PlayStation 5, costs more component for component than what's in the Series X. Yeah. Just based on what they're doing. So they're taking a huge loss, even at $499 for like the top end version. I mean, they're in it to win. And then the $399, to take off the optical and go for digital only, I think is a very fair price, actually. What's interesting in this, and the same thing for the Series
that Blu-ray
X,
drive doesn't even cost $30. Let me just throw that out there, and that's the only difference.
I mean, probably, especially because Sony's head of the Blu-ray consortium. On top of that, figure they get a discount. But on the Xbox side, I think $499 is a fair price for the Series X, but $299 for the Series S, is crazy. And there's a lot of confusion over what the Series S type games it can play.
Right.
Essentially, it can do like it can do, what is it? Xbox One S games at like double the performance. So it's like 2 One S's. It's a little bit confusing, but when people just look at the price and they're like $299, you're like, damn. And
I mean, it has all the processing power, right? It's just
correct.
Not enough to do 4K, so it doesn't do 4K.
Right. And so that's actually a lot of the confusion that I see. And so basically, people, and Prosser went on a rant about this like a year and a half ago about people looking at specs and only judging on specs. When you look at the specs between the Series S and Series X, you instantly will think, oh, the Series S is so much worse. But the specs are specifically focused on resolution. So if you're playing a Series S or Series X, it's not going to feel any slower. It's not going to feel sluggish. It's going to be the exact same experience. It just won't be at 4K. It'll be at 1440p. That's it. That's the only difference that the specs show. The Series X has higher specs so that it can reach 4K, and also Microsoft says 8K gaming. I'm not sure. I'll believe that part when I see it. But other than that, it's the exact same experience, other than, of course, less storage and no disk drive. So it's an all digital console.
Agreed. 2 points about Microsoft. First, I kind of love that they spend $0 designing the exterior box casing of the Series X. They're like, I don't know, this works, and clearly put that R&D into the hardware. But also, I mentioned it several times on this podcast, Microsoft has no problem dropping bills. Like billions of dollars. Yeah. Today, they bought ZeniMax Media and Bethesda.
Dude.
For $7.5 billion.
Oh, I didn't see that price tag.
That's Elder Scrolls, that's Fallout, that's Doom, Dishonored, Wolfenstein. I mean, we're talking about going an argument from Microsoft has no exclusives to Microsoft just doesn't have God of War and Spider-Man.
Right.
And what?
That's a big boy move right there.
Dude, it's big. $7.5 billion.
That's how you go into a new console generation. Now, Jon Prosser, do you play games? Are you a gamer? Where are you at?
So I'm weird with games. I have a personality where if I do happen to like a game, I'm done. Like, my life for the next few weeks is just like, I might as well just play on the toilet because I'm not going to do anything but that game. So it is consistently Fallout. Like, if I spend even 10 minutes with Fallout, it is enough to trap me for the next 10 days every time.
So good.
And now that Microsoft, is going to own Fallout, I mean, I assume the exclusives won't happen this year.
Yeah.
But
we don't know. They could.
Down the road, I guess they could. They can make it real fast. They're just like, the PS5 version, just throw it away.
Yeah, just don't release it on PlayStation.
Yeah. But assuming those exclusives happen, that's bad news for PlayStation. Very, very bad news for PlayStation. Especially games like Fallout and Elder Scrolls.
Right. Fallout's amazing. Yeah. The pre-order fiasco. Did either of you get into this?
What a disaster that was.
Sony apologized, right?
So, yes, but Sony, first they put out a tweet that said, hey, don't worry, we'll let you know when pre-orders are going to start. So we didn't tell you yet, but we'll let you know.
Tomorrow. Don't worry.
Don't worry, guys. And then it'll happen tomorrow sometime. We'll let you know exactly when. Then all of a sudden they just start going live that same day. Yeah. So if you followed Sony on Twitter and then you said, you know what, I'm going to put alerts. I want notifications the second they say these pre-orders are going live. They never told you they were going live. They told you to wait. And then next thing you know, they're gone.
Yes.
What?
And it was like every website that had pre-orders, whether it was Amazon or Best Buy or GameStop, they were all down and crashed. And you got things in the cart and then they would cancel. I mean, it was just an absolute disaster. Then all the pre-orders on Amazon sent an email out the next day saying, yeah, we don't know when you're getting yours. So thanks for pre-ordering. Good luck to you. Thank you, sir. I mean, just an absolute mess. Then Microsoft kind of got a little sassy. It was like, our pre-orders will be easy.
Yep.
We'll see what happens there.
Here's the day and date of our pre-orders. At least you know. At least
as long as you're not making your pre-orders on the Duo.
Right, which is the 20. Terrible. All right, let's take our first break. As we said earlier, we will be getting Jon Prosser's inside knowledge and predictions as to what we're going to see later this year coming out of Apple. But before we get there, we're also going to talk about the new products Apple just dropped and announced. It's coming up next on Geared Up. Welcome back to Geared Up, brought to you by National Car Rental. I'm Andrew Edwards, and it is now time for the National Car Rental Story of the Week. As you know, Geared Up is sponsored by National Car Rental. And if you don't know, I also do a show with National Car Rental on YouTube called Technically Speaking, where I bring you the latest, my picks for the best tech for business travel. Whether you're business traveling or even whether you're going for leisure travel, there's a lot of tech out there that can make your travel more efficient or even more fun. You can check these episodes out at the nationalcar.com control center or go to youtube.com/nationalcarrent. The latest tech puts you in the driver's seat. National Car Rental's Emerald Club will keep you there. Big thank you once again to National Car Rental for sponsoring Geared Up. All right, let's get to the story of the week. Apple had their event a couple of weeks ago, or last week, actually. It was last week. They announced the Apple Watch Series 6, the Apple Watch SE, iPad 8th generation and iPad Air. The Apple Watches and the 8th generation iPad are now available. I've got one here, or when I say one, I mean the Apple Watch. They sent over the Apple Watch Series 6 in product red, and they sent me a space gray, I think it's called. Whatever the dark one is of the SE.
Did you guys see that article from like VentureBeat that was like, Apple doesn't like old people and kids, so they're going to put the ECG in there and kill them all?
I saw that. I saw that. So
like, what the hell?
They put out an article
what do you
saying,
want?
Right. So Apple puts out the Series 6, which is their flagship watch, which has every feature in it. And this year, in addition to the flagship watch, they decided to release a lower end model similar to what they have with the iPhone SE. It's the Apple Watch SE. So it's cheaper. So it's $279 versus $399. That's a pretty good chunk of.
By the way, I'm the only one who called all the details about that watch. Everyone was saying it was going to look like the Series 3.
Looks like the Series 4.
You even called the name of it. You even called the name of it too, didn't you?
Yeah, the SE has a Series 4 design, no always on display, no ECG, and I called the price at $279. Well, I didn't call it. Calling it makes it sound like I predicted it. It was told to me, so that's different. It wasn't a guess.
You had an accurate source as it pertained to this device. VentureBeat says, "Hey, if Apple is releasing a device that's less expensive, but does not include the ECG and does not include the pulse oximeter, then Apple is being, how do you want to say it? They're not acting in the best way towards... Yeah,
they think it's like malicious that they're... Yeah.
I mean, that's...
malicious intent.
That's crazy.
Towards elderly people and children because
like,
they're not
like
including
they have a
this.
choice. Like they can pick if they want a watch with ECG or whatever.
Right. And as somebody who ran a website for many, many years, like that was clearly just about the clicks. And beyond that, how many children need ECGs on the regular?
Right.
Like, I have a 7-year-old who's turning 7 tomorrow. Like I'm worried about a lot of things. Fortunately, his heart is not chief among them right now.
Yeah.
Right. But if for some reason your child did need that, you could just buy them the other one that has it. They made this argument about public health as if Apple is a public health company. They're not. They're not a public health company.
The title of the article should have just been Apple Does Business Thing.
Like it's the same thing when people are like, Apple's just ripping money out of you. They're trying to take money out of your pocket. I'm like, it's a business, man.
Yeah.
Like
that's it.
And people get so mad at me for saying this, but it is a for-profit business. And Tim Cook's sole responsibility is to the shareholders. Like that's anything outside of that is extra, right?
Like
donations.
They made this stuff. They're just a regular technology company that is the most popular watch brand on the world that also makes ECG and all these other features that accessible. And instead of being like, oh my, that is so cool that they focus on that. It's like, oh, you made a watch for regular people? Or that's mean. Just like, I don't understand what the issue is here.
It was a ridiculous article.
Yes.
Let's talk new products. I have a Series 6 on my wrist, and I've got another one here that I bought myself because Apple is not sending me products.
They're not sending any to me either. So
I have a Series 6, somebody who's worn every Apple Watch. Andrew, what's your impressions on Series 6?
So the big feature that Apple was touting was the blood oximeter, which for me, so you can measure your blood actively if you choose to, and then it's also supposed to just like do it at intervals throughout the day.
No, this isn't regulated like in terms of any health department or anything.
Correct.
This is just like if you want to do it, it's there and you can do it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's not going to send you notifications or anything?
No notifications because for that specific reason, unlike the ECG. I've found that the background readings are highly inaccurate. If you go below like 95% blood oxygen, that's pretty bad. And my background readings are like, hey, you have 72% blood oxygen. Like what? So then I'll take it. And it's like, hey, like 95%. So the ones where you actually take it yourself seem to be much more accurate than the background readings. But for me, that's not the main feature. The features for me that are making this watch worth it, there's three of them. Number one, battery life. Way better than my Series 5. My Series 5 was struggling to get through a whole day. And this one, when it's time to go to bed, I still have like 30% battery. Number two, the speed of charging. So when your battery is low, like I started to use it for sleep tracking to test it out, I'll get to 30% battery when it's time to go to bed. I'll put it on the charger. I'm going to like go brush my teeth or whatever. And I can get it up to 40% in like 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So very nice. And the third one is the speed. It is noticeably faster than Series 5. And that might be because Series 5 was actually the Series 4 chip. Just redone and remade, repackaged. Not much faster than the Series. The Series 5 wasn't much faster than Series 4 at all. This is a nice substantial speed increase. So it's those three things.
I like how they did that with the SE. They were like, it has the Series 5 chip. Nah.
It's the Series 4 chip as well.
Yeah.
The last one, though, I forgot about. The 2.5 times brighter always on display. It just feels like it's full brightness at this point. So that's very nice. I think it's nice.
Can you tell the difference outside?
Absolutely. Instantly. Because the Series 5 always on display always felt dim. It was like purposefully dim to save battery. And this one just feels like it's on all the time. What do you think, John?
Well, I'm going to start with the blood oxygen, which is an interesting metric, and it's a bit of confusion over like what that actually means, right? Like, what does it mean? What does your blood oxygen level actually mean? So I actually asked my sister and brother-in-law, both of which are doctors, like what's the significance of blood oxygen? I asked them yesterday. And it can be an indicator of heart health and lung health. So potentially for those two issues. So like COVID right now, for example, you would probably have less blood oxygen because your lungs would presumably not be working to a full capacity. Outside of that, it's not really an indicator for much else. There's been talk of it being used for things like panic attacks, other things, which it can be a marker for. But as it stands right now, it's really just for those. It's another metric for your health. You can use it however you choose, right?
I mean, that's how it stands right now, though.
Right now.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very limited right now. But that's not their plans aren't just that.
And that certainly seems to be the case. Otherwise, it's a very odd thing to tout with very limited functionality. It's like the U1 chip right now, right? Like it's going to be the future, but right now it's just cool for airdrop.
Yeah, it's just them sort of putting it in there so that like after a couple of years, most people have the sensor in their watch. So when when Watch OS 8 or 9 comes out, it all of a sudden has this crazy functionality.
Yeah,
and that makes sense to me. I charge my watch at night every night, so I have not noticed a faster charging. As long as I can get through a day before I go to bed, like that's all I really care about battery life, but I'm going to start paying better attention to it. One thing I have noticed is the Taptic engine is significantly better than the Series 5. The vibrations, and I never thought the Series 5 was bad. This just definitely feels better to me. The always on display looks brighter, but I still think if you have a Series 5, there's very little reason to go for a 6 right now. Right, until those new sensors are doing something new. There's not really a compelling, like unless you really want the blue or the red. I can't see a huge reason to upgrade. A Series 4 is a different story. It's a nice upgrade, and I think the watch is something that's so important to so many people. Like they just don't care. Like I want the new one because it impacts my health. My dad has heart issues. I mean, so the Apple Watch to him is like, is a life-saving device.
Right.
So he's like, I don't care. Like whatever, give me the new Apple Watch. And he's a guy who's like generally is like, my iPhone 5 is fine. So for those people, I think it's worth it. I think it's probably the least exciting, at least right now, Apple Watch update we've seen in a few years.
The only thing, like, okay, so I usually have betas on all my devices. I didn't this year for my watch, though. I didn't upgrade to the beta for the watch. So the other day was the first time I installed watchOS 7. And I have never been more infuriated with a device because they just nerfed it. Like, Force Touch is gone now. And I didn't remember or know that until I went to clear all my notifications. And it was just like, nah. And I was like, I understand if the new one doesn't have the hardware, but mine does, and you took it away. It's just
they got rid of that on devices that have the hardware.
Yes, it's so infuriating. Like I just updated it, and now it's like, oh yeah, that part of your watch doesn't work anymore. I'm just like, okay, why do you have to do this to me? And I didn't find out until I went to clear all my notifications. Now you have to swipe all the way up and then hit clear all.
No, because they advertised that as a feature when you bought it. And
exactly.
Then like if I bought it with that as a feature, why would you take it away later?
Yeah.
Strange.
Pulled away.
It hurts to know that it's just sitting in there and I can't use it.
They also announced new iPads. iPad 8th gen. Not that exciting, although it is their best-selling iPad out there. So it has an A12 processor now, which is much faster than the previous one. But other than that, it's your typical entry-level iPad. The iPad Air was the one that was more exciting.
Oh, it's so spicy.
It has the iPad Pro-like design, supports Apple Pencil 2, and the new A14 processor, which the iPhone doesn't even have yet. A lot of people are saying, why would you get an iPad Pro then? There are significant differences between the two still. iPad Pro, 8 GPU cores, better battery, 120 hertz display, extra camera, LiDAR scanner, thinner bezels, brighter display, more dynamic range.
That gap, though, is narrowing.
Oh, for sure. The gap is narrowing. But what this tells me, this is just my expectation, seeing how good the iPad Air is now is an indicator of how good the next Pro is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And this is all related to supply chain. Like, it wasn't supposed to look this way. The iPads that came out earlier in the year were delayed. They were supposed to be out much earlier. So it's already weird that the iPad Pro came out like that, and now the iPad Air's out, and you're like, this happened in the same year, and they're kind of the same thing. That's weird. But it was because of all the supply chain delays that it looks weird. It wasn't planned this way. In fact, right after this, we were supposed to be getting a new iPad Pro, which is now delayed. And so I feel like for the general public, they don't realize how weird this is. But for us, we're like, wait a minute. This is really close to what you just released with the iPad Pro. And
so when you say it wasn't supposed to look like this, you don't mean visually the iPad Air wasn't
not the design. I mean, look like this in terms of like release timeline. Yeah.
What were things supposed to look like?
Well, the iPads that came out earlier in the year, the iPad Pro was supposed to be out earlier than that. Mm-hmm. And then we were supposed to have another iPad Pro with 5G capability at the end of this year, which now it looks like that's being pushed into next year. So it was supposed to look like new iPad Air that's really cool, and then the even better iPad Pro. But now it just looks weird because we just have the iPad Pro from a few months ago, and now this iPad Air. And now, I mean, you see all the comparisons. They're like, why would you buy the iPad Pro now?
Why was the Air not delayed until after the new iPads came out? The new iPad Pros came out.
Because of the design. It's sort of just same thing they did with the iPhone SE. It was much easier to produce because they just have those parts. You know, they're not new parts. It's sort of like the chassis existed already, and it's easier for them to manufacture and push out a design that already exists with new components in it, basically.
Okay. What can we expect then for the next iPad Pro, which clearly needs to knock it out of the park considering the Air is so good?
To me, it's weird because one of the things will be mini LED, but like, does the general public care? Does that matter?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, but it matters. Like, you know how this is. It's not about the spec, but if mini LED is more like, hey, here's ProMotion 2.0, whatever they end up calling it, and here's how it makes your experience better, then if it makes your experience better, people will care about that.
Oh, and 5G. But it's just like, I don't know. I find it kind of odd that the gap is so narrowed right now.
Yeah, it's very surprising.
I mean, if you saw it as a regular customer, you went in, you saw iPad Air 4, and then like the 11-inch iPad Pro, what would you be like? Okay, are they the same? Why are they different in price?
When can we expect the next iPad Pro?
Well, it was supposed to be later this year, but it's probably going to be early next year.
The springtime event.
Yeah. So they'll be done, and they'll probably hold it till March.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yikes.
Wait a few months.
Yeah.
Actually, that's like half a year. I don't
all
want to
all of the resources went into trying to make sure the iPhone 12 got out.
Of course. I mean, that's product number one. That has to be as close to on time as possible.
Can we shift to the prediction part of this?
Yeah, after we take our break.
John just set it up so nicely. All right, fine.
Yes, we're going to take our break, and up next, we're going to talk about some new stuff, some products that Apple is going to be introducing to the market they're not upgrades, they're new things that Jon Prosser is going to fill us in on. Coming up next on Geared Up. Big thank you to Trend Micro for sponsoring this episode of Geared Up. Trend Micro makes home network security simple and pain-free thanks to their easy-to-install home network security device. Simply plug it into your home Wi-Fi router and it'll scan all traffic going into and out of your network, preventing intrusions, blocking hacking attempts, and more. And you can manage all of your devices from anywhere, right from your smartphone. These days, it's more than just computers on our home networks. We have smartphones, tablets, smart TVs, game consoles, and several smart home devices like lights, door locks, doorbells, and cameras, all of which can provide an entry point into your network. That's where Trend Micro's home network security comes in, as it scans all traffic in real time, blocking any suspected attacks or intrusions. In addition, you can set limits on when specific devices can be online, approve new devices for access to your home network, and even keep the internet safe for your kids with time limits, inappropriate app detection, and content filtering. You can pick up the Trend Micro home network security device right now at trendmicro.com, and that link is in the show notes as well. Once again, big thank you to Trend Micro for sponsoring Geared Up.
All right, so welcome back, first of all. And then before the break, Jon Prosser teased us with iPhone 12, right? He said trying to get the iPhone 12 out on time. There are some new leaks by Love to Dream, who claims a naming scheme for the new iPhones. iPhone 12 mini, iPhone 12, iPhone 12 Pro, and iPhone 12 Pro Max. So, John, what do you know about those? And what do you know about
those names? That is not what I heard.
So what have you heard, and what do you know about the iPhone 12 as far as having and not having?
I just heard iPhone 12, iPhone 12 Max, iPhone 12 Pro, iPhone 12 Pro Max. That's what I was told. Love to Dream has a great track record. I just find it odd because I haven't even heard even a rumbling of that naming scheme. So we'll see.
It would seem that mini makes a product seem less than instead of the size.
Yeah.
It
would be odd.
Would be odd. Yeah, it would be odd. So iPhone 12, John, you've been talking a lot about it. I think the big one that people have been following you for is ProMotion, 120 hertz refresh rate. So what's the latest on that?
Didn't make it. Didn't make it to mass production. I think, was it Ice Universe said there was a silver lining or something? I don't know. I don't know how that would be the case. I mean, I leaked PVT units of the device, and during that leak, I said about half of the PVT units have capabilities to run 120 hertz, which is why in the PVT software, you could see, like it was telling the engineers, if your device supports high refresh rate, then you can enable this. But if you enable it and it doesn't support that, you won't see a difference. And even in that video that we leaked, you could see, because I think the video was filmed at like 30 frames per second. And so you could see, those waves in like a display if it doesn't match the frame rate.
Yep.
You could see when that was toggled, they sped up and they changed. So there was an obvious on a hardware level display change. But from what I was told, mass production started last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, and it didn't make it into the final units.
Could it be that the hardware is 120 hertz capable, but it's being software limited?
That's what I'm being told in terms of mass production. The hardware didn't make it in.
The display is just capable, but the controller.
Yeah,
the controller's not there.
The control unit. So it's and why would they spend the money mass producing a phone with the hardware that they aren't going to use? I mean, why did they do that to my watch? I don't know. How come I have Force Touch hardware in my watch that doesn't work?
So I know the question everybody's asking while listening to this in their cars is if $300 phones, if Poco phones of the world can have 120 hertz, why can't?
Let me answer this. Let me answer this one.
And I'm playing devil's advocate. I know the answer, but that's a question people are going to ask, right?
The problem is when you have these specialty phones, Pocophone, Razr phone, like all these phones that you see on the Android side where you're like, Android phones can do this. Back in the day, it was Apple had, I believe they had an 8 megapixel camera for like 5 years. They didn't upgrade the camera.
Till last year or something.
Right. While Google was doing, or Android phones were doing 10 megapixel, 12 megapixel, and even more. The problem is if you are Pocophone or Razr phone and you expect to sell 100,000 phones, that means you need 100,000 12 megapixel cameras. If you're Apple and you expect to sell 240 million phones, you need 240 million 12 megapixel cameras. And if Sony says to you, we can't make that number of cameras for your phone, we can't supply that reliably, then Apple's going to say, okay, we're not doing that then, because unless we have every single part of the phone available to us, we can't make the phone. And we're not going to take the gamble that says, in March, there's something that happens to the supply chain of the cameras, and now we can't make phones for 6 weeks. So that's why a lot of smaller phone makers will be able to put these newer technologies in that companies like Apple and even Samsung sometimes can't do, although Samsung is able to put a lot of stuff in their phones these days. But I want to ask John a question. John Rettinger, you said, and I quote, 2 episodes ago, that if Apple does not include 120 hertz in their phone, it will be an embarrassment to them as a company and to Tim Cook personally, and he may even need to be removed as CEO.
I did not say
if that were to happen.
I did not. First of all, that is a gross exaggeration of what I said. I never said that about Tim Cook. But I do. But I do still believe that if it's not in there, 120 hertz is not in the phone, Apple is going to have to be held accountable. I think at some point now there's a barrier to entry for what consumers should expect for $1,000 plus phone, right? There are certain things you expect when you pay that amount of money.
Do you think a consumer these days, today, someone going out and buying a phone, average consumer, even knows to look for screen refresh rate?
So first, I hate when people say like the average consumer doesn't want this. Who knows what the average consumer wants, right? They'll speak with their wallet.
I'm not saying what they want. I'm just saying, do you think it's in the mindset of the average consumer?
I think people know when a screen looks good. I think whoever it is, they look at a Note 20 screen.
I agree.
And they look at an iPhone 11 Pro screen. And they're like, well, the Note 21 looks better. I don't know why it looks better, but it just looks smoother to me.
I agree with that. But I would also counter that a lot of people, when the iPhone XR was announced, a lot of people in tech were hating on it. And then when people saw it in person, they were like, oh, this looks totally fine.
Yeah.
This 10R, not 800p display, looks great.
I think the argument of like, well, if you saw an iPhone and then a Note side by side, you can tell the Note, the display is better or whatever. I think that argument would be valid if they both ran the same software, but they don't. And the consumers are choosing with the software and not the hardware. I
think that's true. I think most people are choosing first, do I want an iPhone or do I want an Android device? And then after that, what's that diagram called where like you branch off?
A Venn diagram?
The Venn diagram, the circles?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the other one, the diagram where it's like, okay, you make a choice. Yeah, if yes, go this way. If no, go that way. I don't know why I'm gesturing to these two gentlemen when no one else listening to the show can see what I'm doing.
We care though.
But basically, I think the first question people, okay, am I getting an iPhone or am I getting an Android device? If I'm getting an Android device, then I start comparing against those. If you're buying an iPhone, you have a lot less choices, number one. And number two, it's mostly about budget, I think.
Yeah, it's like, cool, this Note display is really great. But now when I try to text my friends, it looks like I took a picture with a calculator because it
Where's
sends
my
the
Memoji?
Picture. Yeah.
Where's my Memoji at?
Instead, they'll get to, I mean, Samsung has, what is the AR emoji or something? Those scary, terrifying figure things?
Terrible. They're terrible. Don't even bring that up. Listen, let's get into some of the new stuff, though.
Okay.
AirTags, AirPods,
my God, I'm so excited, dude.
headphones.
I'm so excited about AirTags.
So tell us about these things. What does Apple have cooking right now?
So we leaked last week the design for AirTags. And it was, I mean, we had like an assumption of what they were going to look like. There had been an icon that surfaced, leaked from a build of iOS 13 last year or something. Good news, that was it at the time. That was, the logo was like, it was a plastic little thing with the logo on the front. The final design isn't that. So that was a placeholder image, but it was a pretty accurate placeholder image. The new design, it's a circular, it's like a little bit bigger than a bottle cap, circular plastic front that's white with no logo on the front. On the back is a metal plate, like a polished metal plate that has information on it, like AirTag ultra wideband technology designed by Apple in California, that sort of thing. And the logo's there. I'm very, very excited about that. A lot of people don't really understand like how big this is.
Yeah.
They're just like, why would I be interested in AirTags? AirTags have me interested in not just AirTags, but the technology in them, the U1 chip, UWB. I tweeted that it's not just going to be in AirTags. Apple's putting their U1 chip in Apple Watch Series 6, which I tweeted this before the Series 6 came out. Now it's out, and the U1 chip is in there. HomePod Mini, AirPods Studio, AirPods Pro, AirPods 3, iPad Pro, Apple TV, Max, and of course, iPhone 12.
AirPods 3. I didn't realize the U1 chip was so small that it could even just go into an AirPod.
Yeah, so
nice.
Crazy.
And all of this can be shown in AR because of how accurate this is. So let's say you have an Apple TV, you lose your remote. You got no idea where it's at. You can open the Find My app on your iPhone, which will open up your camera and use it like AR. You can point your phone around the room and it'll point like in the couch cushion where your remote is. It can tell you where it's at. And it can do that with all the products that have U1 in it. And it's unlike GPS or Bluetooth, this is accurate within 5 centimeters. So it is crazy accurate. Even if like I use an example on my show for like if you got kidnapped, if you had an AirTag on you, they could find you that way. Or because the U1 chip is in your phone, they can find you that way.
Don't you have to have another iOS device to make it useful nearby?
So here's the thing. The U1 chip can use a connected network of iOS devices, even if they aren't yours. So let's say you're in a restaurant. You left an AirTag there or whatever. Even if your phone didn't ping the AirTag, it will know where it's at based on other people in the restaurant that had an iOS device. It won't connect or share your data or anything like that. It's just showing the location, like last pinged here. So even if like you got kidnapped and your kidnapper took your phone or something, if they had an iPhone, you would still be pinged. So I'm very excited for AirTags. Not sure about the price. The accessories are going to be crazy. Unlike Tile, where it has like a little hole for your keychain.
Yep.
Yeah.
You buy separate keychain accessories. They're little discs that you can slip into a case and put on a keychain that way. Apple sell their own, but also I'm sure third-party accessory makers will go crazy for this and make your own little cases to make the AirTags cute.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And also AirPods Studio, we leaked this week. They look, at first I was like, I don't know about this. But they actually look really great to me. I got used to them and I'm all for it. We had a video and an image, a couple videos. Same thing we did with AirTags. We had real video of the devices that we then made 3D renders of to protect the source. We did the same thing with the video and images of AirPods Studio. And while we were making the renders, somebody leaked, another random Twitter leaker just put out the images and video with no consequences to them because it wasn't their source. It was my source, and there were identifiers specifically on the unit for AirPods Studio, like QR codes, because it was DVT unit. Yeah. And they tweeted, oh, you can't even scan those QR codes, so the source is fine. The issue was not the identifiers. The issue was it was a team of roughly 6 people that had access to those videos. And so since those videos got out, that whole team got nixed.
Oh, the whole team.
Yeah, it wasn't that Apple didn't even take any chances. That whole hardware team just got outed. And so people really don't understand the importance of protecting sources or, why I didn't care about being first. I cared about doing it right. And we spent days and days and days on 3D renders. And even after the video and images had gotten out and I reported about the leaks, I still only showed the renders and said, I'm not going to be showing you the videos and stuff, even though they're already out. It was never my place to show you the videos anyway, so not that it matters now because the team's gone. But
that sucks.
Yep, but
your source included?
One of them, yeah. So there were 6 people on that team specifically, and only one of them was talking to me, and now they're all gone. So
that sucks. Yeah, that really does suck.
That's the behind the scenes in the world of Apple leaks.
Yes,
there are consequences, and the sources know what they're doing, but still. Right. Even when there's
the chances they're taking.
Yeah. It's still rough.
In our last couple of minutes here, give us a run. So you told us about the existence of AirPods Studio. Tell us a little bit more about them, like what to expect from them. One thing I heard was that they might even use ultra wideband just to be able to automatically tell which is the left ear and which is the right ear. You just put them on and it figures it out.
If you look up the renders that we posted, the design of them is pretty universal. Like it doesn't, you can tell that it wouldn't matter which ear cup was on which of your ears because it's a reversible design. So
that's cool.
It can effectively tell which ear is which and then direct the channels appropriately. So it matters which channel's coming through your left ear and which channel's coming through your right ear, especially for stereo audio or spatial audio. And in the most Apple way possible, you can just put headphones on and it'll know which ear is which is really, really cool. Magnetic, the headband is magnetic, the cushion, so it can come out, you can put a new cushion in there. Same with the ear cups, they're magnetic, you can put your own ear cushions there. I'm sure they'll sell a bunch of different ones. No headphone jack, which was interesting, but it does have a USB-C port on the bottom, so that's for charging. But if you wanted, I guess you could put like a lightning to USB-C cord and plug in your phone or your Mac or whatever. So they'll be used that way. And they're not production for I don't think I've ever said this publicly. Production for those is going to be completely done towards the end of October, which means that they could announce it in October, or they might wait till November's event to announce it. But we're probably going to have 3 different events. We had the watch and iPad, and then in October, we're going to have iPhones, and then in November, we're having ARM Macs.
So which ARM Mac is coming first?
The very first one is a 13.3-inch MacBook Pro.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I'm in the market. My MacBook Pro is 2018, so I'm pretty excited to see what comes next.
It's time.
Are you guys a fan of the pre-recorded events?
I think they're doing a great job.
I love them. Yeah.
Yeah,
I still want to be there for hands-on afterwards, but if they invited us there and we just watched the movie, I think they're so well done.
And I don't think they would have ever tried that if we didn't have the circumstances we have now. But now that we see how good they are, I could see them sticking around, continuing to do them, even when things go back to normal.
Same, even for those of us that are no longer invited to Apple events, it levels the playing field too.
Right.
John, I know the answer, but I do want to ask. I know people are going to want to know. Is Lightning sticking around?
Of course, yeah.
For iPhone 12.
Yeah, the definitely Lightning and iPhone 12, and it's one of those things where they don't want an in between. They don't want a bridge. They want Lightning or completely wireless. And until we're completely wireless, we're going to have Lightning. There's no reason to be like iPhone 12 has Lightning, and then iPhone 14 is going to be wireless. But let's have fun for the iPhone 13 and put USB-C port, because then everyone's got to change things all of a sudden, and they're going to go from Lightning straight to wireless.
Okay.
Another good thing that the UWB stuff is good for, the U1 chip, is data transfer. So I'm assuming that down the road they would use it for charging and stuff. But UWB, that U1 chip is going to actually replace Bluetooth for AirDrop.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's much faster with data processing. Wow. Just a little food for thought, everybody. It's very not just for location tracking. You can transfer data with it.
Appreciate that.
Yep. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
I can just see Andrew he just stopped working. The computer in his brain just
looked like It looked like Redger had something to say, so I was like, I'm going to let him talk.
Andrew, it looked like you're about to be rebooted.
No, yeah, I was going to end the show, but I thought you were going to say something, so I was like, let me wait.
You got really excited for the whole data transfer thing, and you were just thinking about all the possibilities.
Oh, no, because I thought it was just about locations. And when you talked about wireless transfer and speeds, I was like, this is way, way more than I actually thought it was, so it's even more exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Way bigger.
Jon Prosser.
This is the new standard, by the way. UWB is just as important to Apple as Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are. This is the new thing.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Jon Prosser,
all right.
Thank you for joining the show this week.
You bet.
Thank you for coming on, sharing your knowledge with our audience.
I'm the best guest ever this week.
In the history of guests.
If you tell people you were on the show, that'll go a long way. That's all I'm saying.
Like I said,
that's all I'm saying.
All caps tweets.
All caps. Thanks for joining the show, and thanks everybody for listening. And that is it for this edition of Geared Up. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, you can catch John and I on YouTube. I'm at youtube.com/gearlive, and John is at youtube.com/John4Lakers. Feel free to head over and subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on all the latest tech. Speaking of subscribing, you can subscribe to Geared Up in your favorite podcast app if you haven't done so already. Just search Geared Up, that's 2 words, not one, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Overcast, or really wherever you choose to listen. If you like what we do, please consider leaving us a rating and review. It really helps other people find the show. Geared Up is a Gear Live podcast, and you can see more from us at gearlive.com. Thank you so much for listening. For John Rettinger, I'm Andrew Edwards, and we'll catch you in the next episode.